If you wanted to escape the corrupt Soviet Union, you could do it two ways: legally and illegally. The legal way involved losing your job, paying fees to the state, and possibly being imprisoned for something called parasitism. Illegally, the sky was the limit, but the bullets were the anchors. That's why some people chose to leave by digging tunnels. Others built their own planes, and KGB spies sailed on ships to foreign lands, hoping they wouldn't get caught by the Soviets before making their escape. Welcome to Uncharted History, and today we'll look at all the different ways you can escape the clutches of Stalin's corrupt Soviet Union. If you lived in the Soviet Union and tried to immigrate illegally, two things could happen. One, you could attain freedom. Or, the second and more likely scenario, you could get captured and sent to a gulag labor camp. Seeing how most people describe the gulags as a fate worse than death, we're going to assume you don't want the second option. So, how would you devise a plan to leave the Soviet Union after World War II? Well, first, we have to realize that there are three ways to travel, so we will divide the escape plans into three groups. 1 by land, 2 by sea, and 3 by air. If you wanted to emigrate from the Soviet Union by land, you would need a 1950s map. Think of the Soviet Union as an impregnable fort with three deadly barriers. The first barrier was the vast land area. The Soviet Union was made up of Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, and Moldavia on the European continent, giving the country a vast land area that made escaping nearly impossible. The second barrier was the satellite states, which you would need to cross if you wanted to leave illegally. So if you lived in St. Petersburg, you would need to cross either Poland, Czechoslovakia, GDR or East Germany, Hungary, Romania, or Bulgaria, all of which were Soviet republics with Soviet leaders, which would send you back to Soviet Russia. And of course, the third barrier was the Iron Curtain, a 7,000-kilometer-long physical barrier that separated the countries of the Warsaw Pact from the countries of NATO. So even if you managed to cross all these barriers, you could only emigrate to two countries by land: 1, Austria, and 2, West Germany. In the beginning, when emigration restriction laws weren't as severe, the fastest way to escape the Soviet bloc was through East Germany. In fact, Konrad Schumann, an East German soldier, was photographed leaping over barbed wire and fleeing into West Germany on August 15, 1961. But this would be the last time anyone from the Eastern Bloc used this German loophole. Just 3 days later, the German Democratic Republic, or GDR, built the Berlin Wall, creating an impassable barrier that few dared to cross. And things would only get more and more difficult from here. The Berlin Wall became part of the Iron Curtain. Crossing it was nearly impossible because the Iron Curtain was laden with walls, fences, watchtowers, minefields, and guards ready to shoot at anyone attempting to escape. The Soviet Union said they did this to stop the brain drain from the country, but that was a lie. They did it to control the people and to prevent NATO spies from getting inside the Soviet Union. Starting in 1935, Stalin sealed off the Soviet Socialist republics. No one from the West was even allowed to take a peek inside the Soviet Union. They had no idea what was happening in the Eastern Bloc. After Stalin's death in 1953, a few Western diplomats and correspondents were allowed entry into the country and were treated like today's tourists in North Korea. They were given tour guides. Their travel was restricted to only a few kilometers within Moscow. Their phones were tapped, and their residences were in foreigner-only locations. Basically, they were shown the idyllic version of the Soviet Union, with modern architecture, great schools, and obedient, hardworking citizens who love the government and everything it stands for. But again, this was a lie. They didn't show the breadlines, the famines, the corruption, the propaganda, the abject poverty and misery. They also didn't show the fact that anyone who said a single word against the regime was immediately arrested and thrown in labor camps, which were so tyrannical that they made the death penalty look merciful. No wonder people wanted to escape this miserable existence to attain freedom. Like the group of West German students who helped their East German family members escape the GDR by digging a tunnel under the Berlin Wall. So let's say you found yourself living in the German Democratic Republic and wanted to emigrate to the West. Prior to the construction of the Berlin Wall, the city was divided into 4 sectors. The largest sector, the German Democratic Republic, was controlled by the Soviets, while the other 3 were under American, British, and French leadership. But even though you live in the largest sector, you know that the GDR was facing serious economic troubles. There were several conflicts in 1948. The General Workers' Strike of 1953 took the lives of 160 East German civilians, and near the 60s, many East German Berliners escaped to the west. So, without any warning, you notice the GDR begins building a wall to separate East and West Berlin. In a matter of weeks, the wall is complete, accompanied by watchtowers and soldiers. But the problem is, some of your family members live in West Berlin. Thanks to the wall, you cannot go and visit them anymore. So what do? Well, if you tried to scale the 13-foot wall topped with barbed wire, you can expect to be immediately captured by the glaring searchlights on top of the watchtowers. If you refuse to come down, armed guards will shoot and possibly kill you. Also, while running towards the wall, you must not step on any of the mines in the minefields. Needless to say, this emigration attempt would be extremely risky, with a very low chance of success. A better way would be to dig a tunnel, just like a group of East Berlin students did in the mid-60s. On the night of October 3, 1964, 54 citizens from East Germany escaped to freedom using a tunnel that went underneath the Berlin Wall. Around 20 to 25 West German college students dug a 145-meter, 475-foot long tunnel that started in the basement of an abandoned West Berlin bakery, went under the Berlin Wall fortifications, and finished beneath a small and non-functional outhouse, aka toilet block, at the back of an apartment building in East Berlin. Knowing that guards and officials would become suspicious of the students if they saw them coming in and out of the abandoned bakery every day, they came up with a better plan. The students took turns living in the bakery for a few weeks at a time and began excavating. First, they dug a 30-foot vertical shaft. From there, they began digging the horizontal tunnel. The sandy soil made work extremely hazardous. The tunnel was prone to collapse, so they used makeshift reinforcements to secure it, while a vacuum cleaner was used to supply the workers with air. The tunnel was 2 feet high and 3 feet wide, meaning the escapees would have to crawl on all fours for approximately 10 minutes to get to West Berlin. After 5 months of work, the tunnel was finally complete. All they needed now was a smokescreen. That smokescreen came in the form of a celebration. During the weekend, on October 3rd, while the soldiers were busy celebrating the 15th anniversary of the GDR, the students told their relatives about the plan and gave them a password: Tokyo. Following the instructions, the family members from East Germany came to the public toilet building. After correctly saying the password, the men, women, and children were taken inside and instructed to crawl as fast as possible. But someone saw them and called the police, reporting suspicious activity in the area. Just as the last group of people entered the tunnel, a truck filled with East German soldiers pulled up to the front door of the outhouse. Thankfully, a group of West German helpers stayed behind to protect the civilians below. The East and West Germans exchanged gunfire, and one East German soldier was fatally wounded in the fight. As the East German soldiers retreated, the group of West German helpers quickly crawled down the tunnel and escaped unharmed. This heroic event is remembered as Tunnel 57, in honor of the 57 East German civilians saved from the dictatorial regime. After this, it became increasingly harder and harder to cross from East to West Germany, as reinforcements imposed strict patrolling schedules and a shoot-to-kill policy. So, people had to come up with strange new ways to escape from the claws of the Soviet Union. Enter Daniel Pohl and his zipline. Daniel Pohl risked getting shot, electrocuted, and torn to shreds by guard dogs just so he could have freedom. As a young 20-year-old man in Soviet Czechoslovakia, Daniel was rebellious and spoke out about the injustices in his country. This was 1985, so most of his friends told him to tone it down and stay silent. Instead of accepting his fate, Daniel plotted his escape. But how do you escape from a country where emigration is forbidden? Well, the good thing was that Czechoslovakia was one of the border states of the Iron Curtain, and on the other side was Austria, one of the only 2 countries where people could seek asylum back then. So Daniel Pohl met with physicist Robert Oswald, another young man who was once imprisoned for political reasons, and they became partners in crime, literally. Over the next few months, they plotted an escape plan. They considered everything from digging a tunnel under the border to building a rocket ship and flying it to Austria. But none of these ideas seemed to have merit, until one day, Robert looked at the power lines and a light bulb went off in his head. They could zip line across the border using the power lines. Sure, they might be electrocuted, but this was their only hope. Over the next few months, Daniel and Robert designed and tested all sorts of pulleys. When they had finally built a working model, they went to the border. Their plan had 5 simple steps. Step 1, infiltrate the border zone. Step 2, climb the tower. Step 3, set up pulley. Step 4, zip line across the border. Step 5, climb down the Austrian tower and go to Austria. And that's exactly what happened. There was no turning back. Robert went first, and Daniel followed shortly after. They would either be free, or they would die trying. Fortunately, they achieved freedom. As Daniel ziplined across the border, all sorts of emotions went through his head. But despite the immense risk of the operation, they landed in Austria and became European celebrities, with countless magazines talking about the heroic story. Today, their homemade zipline and pulley are displayed at the Checkpoint Charlie Museum in Berlin. And even though Robert was content with his new home, Daniel was not. Shortly after the daring attempt, he moved across the Atlantic Ocean and now lives in Las Vegas, Nevada, the only town that can match his rebellious personality. Now, after all these insanely difficult methods of escape, you might be asking yourself, why don't people board a plane, land in a foreign country, and never return? That's a valid question, but A, people were too poor to afford plane tickets, and B, they needed approval by Soviet authorities to leave the country. Plus, 12 Russians tried to do this, but they failed miserably and were sent to labor camps. Their story begins in Leningrad, modern-day St. Petersburg. Operation Wedding began shortly after the Six-Day War in 1967. During the war, the Soviet Union ended all diplomatic relations with Israel, and as a result, a large number of Soviet Jews applied for exit visas. But this was easier said than done. When someone applied for an exit visa, they would lose their jobs, because you could never know how long the approval process would take, or if you would even get approved, you could easily be charged with social parasitism. That's a criminal offense where people who didn't work for extended periods of time were prosecuted for harming the Soviet state and not contributing to the general well-being of the nation. In other words, not working was illegal in the Soviet Union. So even though you could technically apply for an exit visa, no one actually did. For this same reason, Edward Kuznetsov organized a group of 16 dissidents, 14 of whom were Jewish, to emigrate from the Soviet Union via plane. Their plan was simple. They would buy out a 12-seater Antonov An-2 plane going from Leningrad to Priozersk, saying they had to attend a wedding. When the plane made an intermediate stop, they would kick out the 2 pilots and fly the plane to Sweden. Mark Dimschitz, a former military pilot with flying experience, agreed to fly the aircraft. In Sweden, they would seek asylum and finally be free to go to Israel, their homeland. These so-called refuseniks knew that there were 2 laws governing defection attempts in the Soviet Union. 1. Illegal traveling abroad without a passport was a crime punishable by 1 to 3 years in prison, even in cases where the destination was another Eastern Bloc country. And illegal defection to a non-Eastern Bloc state and refusal to return home was considered treason against the state. The risks were high, but they would give anything for freedom. And on June 15, 1970, the group met up at Leningrad's Smolny airport. But instead of a trip to freedom, they were all given a one-way ticket to the gulags. Someone tipped off KGB agents about their attempted defection. They were arrested and tried before the Soviet court. After the trial, 9 of the participants received prison sentences, while Mark and Edward were charged with high treason and sentenced to death. Their death sentences were later commuted to 15 years in the gulags. Over the following year, 6 hijacking attempts were made by different defection groups from Armenia, Lithuania, and the Soviet Union. Plus, an additional 3 airliner hijackings happened in East Germany, and none of them succeeded. But this didn't stop people from trying. Despite the numerous failed hijackings in the past, Ivo Zdarsky beat the odds when he landed in Vienna's International Airport in 1984. Neither corrupt socialists nor the Iron Curtain could keep Ivo from freedom. Born in Czechoslovakia in the 60s, Ivo, an inventor by heart, knew that he couldn't live in a country where they would like to keep you boxed in with barbed wire, machine guns, and threats. In 1984, at age 24, Ivo built his own airplane. Knowing that guards would shoot at any plane flying over the Iron Curtain, he was waiting for the right time to escape. One night he loaded his plane on the back of his truck and drove to the Austrian border. At 3 a.m., Ivo boarded the aircraft and glided over the Iron Curtain. He kept flying until he saw something that resembled an airport. It was only after landing that Ivo found out he was at Vienna International Airport. When the authorities came, the young man showed them his expired passport and sought asylum. From Austria, he moved to Los Angeles, where he built a successful propeller business. But today, Ivo lives in Lucin, Utah, a town in the middle of nowhere where he's testing his new inventions, like the vertical takeoff and landing mini-airplane. Ivo became the first man in history to escape the Soviet bloc by plane. So now we're left with only one other way of leaving the Soviet Union, by sea. And the best example of this would be Anatoly Granovsky, a Soviet spy who escaped the Soviet Union. NKVD was the predecessor to the KGB. Anatoly became a member of the NKVD in 1939, shortly after his bureaucrat father lost his life in the Stalinist purges of the 30s. After being admitted to the secret Soviet organization, Anatoly was tasked with spying on the high-ranking bureaucrats who were once friends with his father. Since most of them knew Anatoly personally, he could spy on these bureaucrats without them ever suspecting it. Then, during the second part of World War II, Anatoly had a different mission, that of feeding the Germans false information about the Soviet Union's strategy. After the fall of Berlin and the end of the war, when Anatoly saw how the Soviets beat and abused the Germans, he was disillusioned with the Soviet Union's mission. To make matters worse, the winning Soviet army tyrannized other Soviet soldiers who were caught by the Germans and sent them to labor camps instead of celebrating them as veteran heroes. Sickened by this, Anatoly decided to leave the Soviet Union, knowing that if he was ever caught, they would kill him. After working in Eastern Europe, the NKVD gave him a new cover. In the summer of 1946, he became a spy member of the Merchant Navy. While the ship was in Odessa, Ukraine, the MGB, a successor to the NKVD, approached Anatoly with a new job. They asked him to be a spy aboard the ship Petrodvorets. To get aboard the ship, he would need to make a transfer in Stockholm, where the merchant ship Anatoly was on and the Petrodvorets would meet. Anatoly agreed, seeing this as his ticket out, but things didn't go as planned. On July 10, 1946, Anatoly arrived in Stockholm. On July 21st, while they were traveling to the city with his colleagues, Anatoly slipped away from the group and went straight to the U.S. military attaché. To the Americans, he looked just like another panicked Russian man. None of them spoke Russian, and Anatoly didn't speak English. Fortunately, the supervisory military attaché had a colonel who spoke German. Being well-versed in German himself, Anatoly told the colonel his story. The Americans listened, and when he thought they would give him asylum, the Americans refused. Anatoly was arrested by the Swedish authorities. He was imprisoned for 4 months, and the Swedes planned on repatriating him to Soviet authorities, which was like a death sentence. By a sheer stroke of luck, King Gustav V of Sweden granted Anatoly asylum in November 1946. He then wrote his memoirs titled All Pity Choked and published them in 1950 in London. The memoir was later named I Was an NKVD Agent. Near the end of his life, Anatoly moved to Washington, D.C. and lived there until his death at age 52 in September 1974. Freedom is something all people want. They are willing to dig tunnels, slide down electric poles, risk being shot, and even fly an extremely unsafe homemade plane just to be free from the shackles of corruption. The Soviet Union believed they were saving people from the greedy bourgeoisie, but in reality, they unleashed a plague known as Stalin. As they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. This is Uncharted History. See you in our next video.